What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another 515 Sports Podcast. Myself, Brock, joining you again. Big news happening all around the sports world right now and in many different areas, of course. But as I think everyone would agree, the most important news or the biggest news of all, Caitlin Clark, officially the all-time leading scorer in NCAA basketball history. Shout out Caitlin.
Shout out.
That's a big accomplishment.
Huge accomplishment. Did it off of free throws. I think it's kind of, I don't know, part of me kind of thinks it's a little cooler when it's off of free throws, especially the way that she did it, because like it was a technical free throw, so legit was just her, the basketball and the hoop. And that's all that mattered.
That pick will go so hard in like 5 years. Like those pictures in 5 years will go so hard.
It will go down as one of the most important shots in women's basketball history and in basketball in general. And what a way to cap off a huge week for her, because she announced that she's going to the WNBA, and very controversial opinions on whether or not that's a good move. I know you mentioned when we were texting throughout the week a couple tweets that people were sending out on whether or not she was taking a downgrade of a price tag based off of her abilities, but breaks the record against Ohio State, who won the Big Ten, the regular season championship, who beat Iowa earlier this year. One thing that Iowa is really good at is if you play them once and you beat them, the chances of you beating them the second time, very rare, if not impossible, because they did that with Kansas State earlier this year. Of course, they dropped one against Nebraska, but lost to Ohio State at Ohio State. Of course, we all know that whole court storming situation, but they got their revenge at Carver Hawkeye. Last home game for Caitlin Clark will cement herself as probably the most influential and greatest Iowa Hawkeye of all time, no matter the sport. Probably will have her jersey retired here within the next 6 months, knowing how quickly Iowa moves on those things. But congrats to her and the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I mean, Caitlin Clark wasn't losing on senior day. So whoever drew that matchup, I think it could have been, I don't know. Okay, maybe not South Carolina, but I'm pretty sure most teams weren't winning that game. So, I think that's a big win, obviously, for the program, for the team this year. But most importantly, I think just a big night overall for not only Clark, but just women's basketball in general.
I will say real quick, and again, this has nothing to do really with Clark. I did see a couple tweets that were like, I never thought that this record would ever be broken. Buddy, it was like 4 points away last year from being broken.
Right.
And if Detroit Mercy was in the NCAA tournament, it would have been broken. So that's the one thing that does bug me a little bit, is people who probably only watch Power 5 big basketball or anything that the media is pushing. And this example would be Iowa women's basketball this year. They probably didn't realize that Davis from Detroit Mercy was literally 3 points away from tying the record with Pete Maravich. However, that doesn't really matter, because there was almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So
right,
and Clark was on the dime. So
right, and I'll say this: Caitlin's record might only stand for like 3 more years. So
I think you're referencing someone in California.
Yep, dude. I don't care whatever happens. I'm saying I was like top 5% on that bandwagon before the season started. I was like, oh, this is I'm in on this.
Do you want to go on record right now and say that she's going to?
Oh yeah, I'll say it right now. Judy Watkins will be the all-time leading scorer by the time she graduates in 3 years. As long, of course, obviously she has to stay all 4 years and that whole thing, but she will.
I love it. Max has been on the Juju Watkins train since day one, and
I'm like Juju Watkins top 10 fan.
She's been performing better than Clark did her freshman year scoring wise. So,
and she won't have all the COVID stuff. I mean, you never know, I guess, but in theory, she won't have any seasons shortened, right? So that's what people also forget. Why Clark's record? I mean, I think what I've learned the most, to be honest, from this is like people are just gonna hate because they got nothing better to do, right? Like,
LeBron hater, I agree.
right. Like, okay, first off, LeBron, 40K points. Shout out LeBron. Bro's got triple double in all-time stats. He's got like 40K points, 11K assists, 10K rebounds. That's bananas. That's freaking crazy. But like Clark had shortened season, still got the record. People
Yeah,
that
she did it in
right,
lesser games than Kelsey Plum did with
right,
her regular record.
and the people that are all, oh man, she shoots it so many times. Dog, she wins. It don't matter, right? Like if you shoot it 100 times and you win the game, you good job, right? Like in my opinion, right? Good job. If you shoot it 5 times and win the game, good job, right? Like, why does that matter so much? That's one thing I can't understand.
Well, and people forget, if you're gonna talk about Clark shooting a bunch, Pete Maravich shot more than her per game.
Right, right,
Granted, there was no 3-point line, and I know that's a huge argument for why
right,
Pete's record is great. And again, we're not discounting what Pete
right,
did in 3 years
right.
whatsoever. He shot almost 40 times a game in his career, and people are still complaining about Clark, how much she's shooting. And I'll look it
Mhm.
up while you talk here, but I'll find what her average is per season on attempts per game.
Yeah, even I mean the same thing can be said about Juju at USC, right? I mean she shoots the ball a lot, but they're ranked number 7 in the nation, and they've beaten some really good teams. I mean, uh, USC beat Ohio State, so like first game of the year, Juju Watkins' first game of the year, she had like 30. She was going absolutely crazy at the Las Vegas. Uh, the same event that I can't remember what it's called, but it's in Las Vegas, the same event that LSU lost to Colorado. And the Pac-12 had some really good teams. And now I think it'd be so much better for Juju, right? Because she's going to Big Ten. So you're going to be on so many more games. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if in 3 years you got Gus Johnson calling Juju's final game on
Mhm.
Fox, breaking the record of viewership and her breaking all-time scoring rate. Like, that if that happens, I'm not going to be shocked.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. So real quick, Pete Maravich in his 3 years at LSU, so on average he shot around 38 field goals a game. His freshman season he shot 39 field goal attempts per game, 37 and a half his sophomore year, and junior year was 37.7. Caitlin Clark only shot over 20 once, and
Right.
on a season average. And that is this year at 22.7. And I think a lot of that actually has to do with the quality of team this year.
Yeah.
Again, this Hawks team is still really good.
Mhm.
However, we all know if Clark wasn't on this team, they probably wouldn't be a top 10 team easily.
Right.
And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not discounting this Hawks team because they would still be able to make a good run in the tournament either way. But now Juju Watkins, she's shooting 22.8 attempts per game. But again, I think it's similar situation. She doesn't necessarily have a whole team around her yet. But like you said, move to the Big Ten, things could change. And you've seen strides in this USC team as the season's moved on. Her attempts may go down, but she still could be shooting at an efficient rate as the years go on.
Absolutely. And I think one thing to note about Iowa, yeah, Caitlin's gone after this year. But boy, if they get who I think they're going to get recruiting wise, they ain't going to be hurting for very long. They're going to be right back in it, right? And I think, I mean, to have something like that where you could potentially just maybe even just form into like a national team that's just always up there, that ain't easy to do. And with Clark, you have such a good fan base right now. If they get who I think they will, you Iowa fans, you got to stick with them for like 2 years. You got
Are
to
you
just
referring to someone in the 515?
no.
Okay.
You got to stick with them for like a year and a half. They might not be they obviously it's going to be hard to get back to that Clark level. Just stick with them. And then if they get Greenway and if they get Bourne, boy,
Yeah.
it's they are going to be right back up in the top. I mean, I'm not saying Greenway is going to be the next Clark, but good lord.
He'll
And
be
if
He'll
she
need
doesn't
to
go to
be the next
Iowa,
Clark.
if she doesn't go to Iowa, I'll be absolutely shocked. Her dad played linebacker at Iowa. Like, I'll be so shocked
Oh,
if she doesn't go to
Chad's
Iowa.
daughter? I didn't
Yeah.
even think about
Chad's
that.
daughter, Maddie, I think, Maddie Green, dude, freaking Hooper. I mean, boy, just I think I don't know. I'm not gonna say that. I don't know if that's true or not, but she is a bucket. So many buckets. I have to look up how many points she has, but I think it's something crazy. Like, if I remember right, I think she's been playing varsity since like 8th grade or something crazy. Like,
Oh, jeez.
she is a bucket. And obviously, like I said, it's gonna be hard to be the next Clark or the next Kelsey Plum. But if you get someone, think about South Carolina, right? Cardosa's okay, like pretty good player. Pow Pow's pretty good player, but you don't have like a Clark, but you're
Don't need to.
undefeated, right? You won every single game in the SEC. Like, you don't have to have that level of player.
Mhm. Did
But
you see Don Staley was at the state tournament last weekend?
yeah, shout out.
That's a huge deal, man.
I mean, that's like, remember when Gino came?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't remember who he was watching, but Gino came. Gino Auriemma came to the state tournament one year, and then Don Staley. I mean, Iowa women's basketball, dog, is just we've talked about this for
Oh
years
yeah.
on years now. It's just so good, just unbelievably good, and I think it's going to keep going.
I think it's getting better, even better.
I think it's getting better also.
But so with the news of Caitlin Clark going to the WNBA, which again, I think we both agree that those that are saying that she's taking a pay cut are, I think, just misunderstood on what
You're
the
also
WNBA is. Yeah.
you're also just completely wrong. Like, Darren Rovell tweeted that out, right? Got so much
Mhm.
traction, got like 3 million views. Dude got community noted. Like, you're just
One,
wrong. You're just
I don't.
wrong.
From everything I've been told, she hasn't taken a dime from the university. She hasn't taken a dime from the Storm. So all of her endorsement deals are
Right.
off of her. Like that's just Clark doing business by herself.
Right.
So she's going to take all of those, go to the WNBA. If she's not the number one pick, I would be shocked.
See what we
And so
Thanks.
yeah, so she'll again. The contracts are not the NBA's contracts, but that's just how the league is right now. However, those endorsement deals are going to grow. She's going to have a signature shoe by the end of the year.
Well, you also
And
have to, I mean, you think people worry about the endorsement deals so much. You look at contracts. If she's making zero money off endorsements, which she's not, she will still get more money because she's making zero from the university. So now she'll make X amount. I don't know how much the first pick gets paid in the WNBA draft, but that's going to just be added on to whatever she's making now. It's not going to be a decrease at all. And I mean, you said it. She's going to have her own shoe, and I bet they're called the Logo 3. I would bet they're called the Logo 3s. I bet they're
that'd be
called the
cool.
Logo 3s. That would
That'd
be
be cool.
so awesome. They should be. That'd be my pitch if I'm Nike. And
Oh,
Nike's
that'd
got
be
a great
great.
marketing team. I mean, she breaks the record yesterday, and Nike instantly whips out a commercial.
Oh yeah, they
And
know
they
what
got
they're
the
doing.
billboards in freaking Iowa City. Like, they know what they're doing, and she's gonna have her own shoe. And she's gonna. And if I'm pitching, I'm saying Logo 3s.
Logo 3s, I'm in for that. Well, so here's the results from the draft lottery earlier this year. Indiana Fever number one. Of course, there's some interest in Indiana already involving the Clark family.
Yeah.
So she's probably going to go number one. And what a duo that they're going to be having together with Aaliyah Boston, who a lot of Hawk fans didn't like a couple years ago, strictly off of the fact that she won Player of the Year over
Yeah.
Caitlin Clark. And now she's going to be teaming up with Caitlin Clark, who won the Player of the Year the following season. And so, what are your thoughts on this potential duo? I think it potentially could have an even bigger impact than Clark just being on a team by herself. And the WNBA, I feel like, is in for a great couple of years.
Oh yeah. Great couple years. I mean, Clark and Boston are going to be a great duo because of what they do, obviously on the court, but outside the court, they are going to be like Boston does a lot of analysis stuff on Peacock NBC right now. So people are starting to know who she is outside of, if you don't watch the W at all, right? Clark, everybody knows. So you're going to bring in a lot of people to watch both of them play, specifically Clark, obviously. But if you can combine two good personalities like that, it's just going to be so much better for the game, for the team, for the state, like whoever there's not really any downfall. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's going to be awesome next year at the All-Star game when there's Caitlin, Sabrina, and Kelsey Plum or whoever it is competing against some of the guys at the NBA weekend. Like, that'll be awesome, right? So it's just going to keep growing, and that's what it should do, man. Like, there's no reason it shouldn't. It's good basketball. People who don't watch it, there's always, like we said earlier, just haters that are going to hate on stuff anyways. But it's awesome to see it getting more respect because it's just kind of happened the past couple years, and Caitlin has a lot to do with that, but also just everybody kind of respecting it a little bit more. And there's some really good players that aren't Caitlin that will go in this draft, right? Like if Cameron Brink decides to go, I bet she should be the number 2 pick. She might stay. She's got another year if she wants it at Stanford. Like there's some really good players that could go. Like Tennessee's got a really good player. Rakea Jackson, she's a good player. Like Aaliyah Edwards, Cardosa. There's really pretty good players that top 5 should be pretty loaded in this draft class. But obviously, people who don't watch the W, it's so hard to make a roster. So honestly, if Brink goes, like she'd make a roster for sure. Caitlin's obviously going to make the roster, but if you're outside of that top 5, man, you're not necessarily guaranteed anything. Like
that's why this expansion is huge for the WNBA.
The Sky last year drafted, I can't remember her name. She played at Virginia Tech. 25. I can picture her face. I can't remember her name. 25 from Virginia Tech. She got drafted to the Sky first round last year. Didn't make it past training camp. Like it's just so hard to. And
she Dallas had like 15 picks. It seemed like last year, and it's
Steph didn't play because ACL and everything, but she just signed officially with them a couple weeks ago. So, she'll be a rookie next year, but she had to. She was here at Iowa State last year, so it's just kind of. It's a little bit different of a league that people don't really want to invest. Like, if you're a hater of it, you're not going to spend the time to get to know it because it's not exactly the same. But man, some people that can hoop in the W, and there's some good hoops that go on.
The cheapest ticket for here, I'll fix the graphics real quick for Clark right now for her first 4 games is the first game, her opening night. The most expensive ticket, the cheapest ticket is $131. And it's at the Connecticut Sun. And I'm like, how many, like, because how far is Connecticut's arena to ESPN's headquarters? Because I feel like it's just going to be filled with ESPN personalities that game.
Yeah, I would guess it is. I don't know how far it is, but I would guess. And keep in mind, Connecticut's a freaking basketball state, and they have watched a lot of good women's hoops, so they're not going. They'll respect it. So, I would guess that is not going to stay at that price for very long.
And then you go to the home opener for the Indiana Fever, cheapest ticket right now, $359.
You have to. I don't think people will understand how absolutely bonkers that is. Like, I think you could go to Sky games last year in Chicago for about $5. Like.
No offense to your fan base, but I was trying to compare it to the Miami Heat's tickets that were on Saturday. There were some going for $50. And this that was like, I think Miami, they have a GA section or something.
Yeah.
That's probably what that was. But like still, this is $359 for basically back row of the section 200 section in Indiana. And then you go to at the Liberty, it's at 156. That will go up like crazy. I guarantee you that, given that New York's another big basketball area, and they're
Sabrina good. Is on the Liberty. Like, so that would be Sabrina versus Clark 1.0. I don't know, man. Like, it's just awesome to see at the end of the day. Like we said, people are just going to hate on stuff to hate on stuff, and that's okay, right? Like, you can't change everybody's mind. You can't change everybody's opinion. Sometimes people are just going to do their own thing, and that's all right. But if you want to, now if you're really going to decide like I want to get in on this, now is about as good as time as you could ever have to even jump in on something like this.
The W needs to bring back or needs to expand to Iowa. And if they do, they need to bring back The Iowa Cornets. That is the greatest name. I found this over the weekend, and it's the greatest name of all time when it comes to naming like teams based off of where you are. The Iowa Cornets, man, bring them back. Bring them back to the well, man.
Start the movement. Start the movement right now.
But
oh man.
No, I can't wait. It's gonna be fun. And you were talking about Cameron Brink, if she should stay, or I guess you didn't really say if she should stay or not, but like the problem is with, again, like you said, with the roster situation and how hard it is to make a league. Like if she stays, there's a lot of good names next year that are on the list. Like Paige Becker's announced that she's coming back for her senior year, so she's going to automatically be probably a top 5 pick potentially.
Yeah.
Just given her name, and she's been doing really well the last couple weeks. But getting a full season under her belt will help her in her draft stock. So she's just one name that wasn't necessarily supposed to be here the following year, but yet she's going to. And that's just going to create a deeper and deeper pool for the WNBA draft the following season.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of people that are making decisions that they won't impact a ton of people, but they will impact a good amount of people that are in it's important for them, right? So you got Cameron Brink could decide to stay, could decide to go. The other two big ones, I think, you got Angel Reese that could decide to stay, decide to go. You got Haley Van Lith that could decide to stay or decide to go. Like those are the three that really could shake stuff up. I don't know. We'll have to we'll see what happens, but I don't know. Like honestly, I could see those three going either way. So you have to see, right? You can't really decide. I don't know. You just have to see.
I completely agree. And I mean, it's not the same because I don't think she's necessarily a talent right now that would go to the WNBA, but we're talking about big news of people coming back. This was probably the biggest one in the entire college women's basketball landscape, but nobody realizes how big of a deal it is except for Iowa State fans. Emily Ryan announces that she's coming back for a 5th season with the Cyclones, and I can't wait to hear your response to this because it's so big, because it's almost the exact same team next year. Plus, they got a couple freshmen coming in that are going to contribute probably some minutes right away.
Yeah, I mean, it's big news, obviously. But I think the most important thing is we were talking about earlier this year. We didn't know she had that extra year or not. Like it's so hard to keep track of. But everything that happened with her, how she went about this season, makes so much sense to me now that she is coming back next year. And I think she'll definitely have an added edge, maybe you could say, just because of how this year went. Not that this year went bad at all. This year went great for him, like exceeded expectations, I think.
Oh, by far.
And it wasn't even close, right?
The cabinet was bare at one point.
4 seed in the Big 12 tournament, double bye, like you take that any day of the week. And so I don't think I wouldn't say there's a chip on her shoulder, but knowing her a little bit, there always is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's great for the program in general. Great for, I think, a lot of the freshmen this year and a lot of the freshmen next year, like just to get another year of Emily Ryan, just to see what you've already seen what it is, right? But just get that leadership for another year, just kind of guide everybody and, see what happens. Because like you said, man, it's pretty much going to be the same team next year. So you're not going to really, I mean, your only pieces that are new would be you want them to be new. You're not going to have anybody new really contribute. I'm sure there will be, knowing how they roll out there. But, man, it's huge news for Iowa State and women's basketball in general. Just a big one that I don't know if I'd say it went under the radar, but the big one that, like you said a little bit, you kind of got to know about it to know about it.
Next year, it will start out quiet, but with how good I think this Iowa State team will be next year, especially with the addition of Emily Ryan coming back, it will be a top storyline when it comes to women's basketball and in terms of the impact one player can have on a team. Because, I mean, Bill Finley's mentioned it, that she might be one of the most important players in the program's entire history, and it's based off of her leadership. And you see how she is on the court. She is basically the quarterback of that entire team, and she's always talking, no matter what, motivating teammates and everything, making sure that everybody's doing their job. And like we said at the beginning of the year, I think that the Cyclones actually benefited from her being out at the beginning of the year because it forced the freshmen to step in the bigger roles right away. And now it makes a lot more sense why they were not necessarily forcing her back in to playing.
Yeah.
Because she's coming back. And next year, this Cyclone team is going to be scary to face, especially with the new Big 12 where you don't have Oklahoma or Texas. Granted, you do add some good programs from the Pac-12, but right now I'd say Iowa State would probably be a top 3 preseason pick in the Big 12.
I'm interested to see how we talk about football, we talk about men's basketball, we talk about a lot of the sports with conference realignment. The women's side of the Big 12 and the Big 10 basketball is going to be really interesting because, like we talked about, Juju, she's going to the Big 10. Oregon's usually pretty good, but this year they're not good at all. Like, worst team in the Pac-12. But they're usually solid. They can recruit. I know they got a good recruit coming in. I can't remember her name. She's from Texas, but Big 10. Big 12, Arizona, really good program. Like, really good program. Obviously a little down this year. But Colorado, dude, J.R. Payne's got them hooping out there. Like, really good team. Really good team. And I don't know. It'll be interesting because I don't know if they're one of those teams that was, we got really good recruits, and then we got really hot for a couple years, and then we kind of went downhill. I don't know if they're one of those teams yet because this right now is like the prime. So we'll have to see. But man, there's some really good teams coming to the Big 12 on the women's side for basketball. That'll be really interesting just to see. And I think it's important to know, like, they won't have as hard of adjustment period as some of those other teams like that had it this year, right? So we see on the men's side, you see Cincinnati, you see BYU. They're able to hang, right? They can kind of hang. UCF's beat some teams, but on the women's side, they almost did it again. On the women's side, it's been a little tougher for those teams because the gap is just a little bit bigger. But they'll have another year to close that gap, right? So that plus the addition, I don't know. I think it would be a really good conference to watch next year.
Would you agree that the SEC probably is the number one conference for women's basketball? Or is it more? It's definitely top heavy.
Yeah, it is. I don't know, man. Like, Big Ten's like the bottom of the Big Ten is really bad. Like the bottom of the Big Ten's really, but the bottom of the Big 12 is not very good, and the bottom of the SEC is not very good either.
I would say that the bottom of the Big 12 has gotten better. There used to be some
it has.
really, really bad.
Really, really bad.
Yeah. But I think that it's going to be the difference between the men's and women's side on the realignment is that I feel like a lot of these conferences are going to be a lot more competitive now. SEC really isn't adding anybody, so they're going to probably stay the same. But like the Big 10 and the Big 12, if you like competitive, if you like competitive basketball where you're not like, we know who's going to probably finish number one in the top of the conference, you're going to really love the new Big 10 and the Big 12 for women's college basketball because every year it can be a different team. I truly believe that. Granted, are you going to have your similar names up there? Baylor, Ohio State, Indiana, like those names are going to be up there? Yeah, that's how it is. There's always those names, but you can have a team that comes out of nowhere. Like you said, Oregon's down this year, but usually a pretty successful program. Arizona coming to the Big 12 could ruffle a lot of feathers with different teams because some teams in the Big 12 are trying to build up to get back to catch up with the Big 12 competitiveness. Now you're adding another good program into the conference. I'm excited to see the women's side a little more than I am the men's side because I think the men's side, everybody kind of knows the Big 12 is probably going to be the conference.
Yeah, the Big 12 on the men's side, you're You're not really losing anybody key.
Yeah.
And you're gaining a couple, like, oh boy, like that's a good program, right? So I don't know, like I'm more the women's side's more interesting to me in
Yes.
terms of conference realignment in basketball.
Yeah. And I want to know how that's going to shape up like the NCAA tournament because like the Big 12 and the men's side, you can lose 10 games in the
10
conference and
times.
still
Oh yeah.
find a way to get in. Women's side, it's like Iowa State beating K-State last week almost solidifies their spot into the tournament,
Yeah.
and they're still supposed to be a 9 seed, and they're
Right.
number 4 in the Big 12. That shows you
Right.
how hard it is to make the
Mm-hmm.
tournament in the women's side of things versus the men's side.
Right. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. Speaking of the men's side though, Big Ten conference standings on the men's side. If you look at it right now, revenge of the Big Ten West. I'm telling you, Big Ten West is the first half, and the East is the bottom half. Like I've never seen anything like it because you don't have anything. You don't worry about East and West in basketball. It's just funny to look at. So you have all of the teams that are in like you talk about football, right? Oh, Big Ten West. Like, what are we doing? Big Ten West has the first like 7 teams in basketball in the conference standings, and then the bottom, however many, are
Did you also notice that the Big Ten West in basketball is really good at scoring the ball,
right.
and the defense may be a little lacking sometimes, depending on
Right.
who you're playing or who you're talking about. And then football, it's the exact opposite.
Right.
Offense is
Right.
non-existent.
It's just
So,
funny to look at the difference where you have football, Big Ten West, everybody hates on it the whole time, and then
yep.
this year in basketball, it's like the best teams are the Big Ten West. Like the whole Big Ten West is better than all of the Big Ten East.
But sticking with the women's side of things with basketball, all the tournaments I think are this week, right? Or most of the main
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Um, I know that the Big 12 used to do it the same week as the men's tournament, which I'm not going to comment on whether or not I like that. I think you can probably guess whether or not I like this move. But we'll look at some of the brackets. Here's the Big 10 women's side, and I'm not going to lie. I'm hoping that we get another Ohio State Iowa matchup, and I think that's probably what we're going to end up getting, unless I think I think Ohio State's going to make the championship game. I'd love to get your opinions on this. I think Iowa, unless they drop the ball, have a game like they did against Nebraska. But I think the Nebraska thing was strictly off of trying to keep that scoring record to being at home at Carver.
Mhm.
Unless Iowa drops the ball, I think we're getting Hawkeyes, Buckeyes 3.0.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal, right, for
Yep.
everybody, viewing purposes. But I mean, also, first off, shout out Big Ten women's basketball, first sellout for the Big Ten tournament in history. That's big time. But I don't know, man. I really want to watch Indiana Iowa 3.0 first. I
That
think
that that
that
will
could
be
be a
fun too.
real good game. Like, I mean, that was a good one because when Indiana went into Carver, Iowa pretty much pretty much ran them.
Yep,
When Iowa went into Assembly, Indiana stomped them pretty good, like
that's a good point.
pretty good. So,
As long as they don't wear those terrible uniforms that
oh
they wore in
my
that game.
goodness,
Those were
what were
disgusting.
those, man? That was horrible. And I think Indiana's got a pretty good team. And outside of Ohio State, I think Indiana can guard Caitlin the best. They have a couple good defenders they can throw at her. Um, but I don't think Iowa will have any trouble with Wisconsin or Penn State. I mean, Wisconsin is, yeah. I don't think they'll have any trouble with them. Uh,
Yep.
and I hope Indiana doesn't have any trouble with whoever they get. I don't think they will. I mean,
Yeah, the
your ideal matchups I think would be Iowa, Indiana in the semis, Ohio State. I think Nebraska could probably beat Michigan State. I don't know if
I
they
was gonna say
will.
I want Nebraska to play Ohio State. I think that'd be kind of fun to watch.
Nebraska's actually got a pretty good program, and they got a
Mhm.
really good commit. Britt Prince. That is, she's going to Nebraska. She's from Nebraska. Really good player. I think her mom played at Iowa State, maybe. But really good player. And I think they could maybe get Michigan State. So I hope it's Ohio State in the final against whoever, whether it's Iowa or Indiana. I think that'd be a
Who's your pick?
To win it all?
To win it all.
I think I'm going to go with Indiana.
Okay.
Sneaky Indiana pick. I think Ohio State's really good, and J.C. Sheldon is probably sleeper pick for like underrated player, like really underrated player, really good player. Iowa, I don't know. I could see Indiana getting them. I could also see Indiana getting stomped by them. So I don't know, but either one of Ohio State, Iowa, Indiana rematch would be
Yep.
Good game. So I think either of those three, like I don't know the odds on it or anything, but I bet those three are pretty even on
Oh yeah.
who could win it all.
And I'm gonna honestly go with Iowa. I think the winner of that Indiana Iowa matchup may be the winner of the Big 10 tournament. Because if Iowa, like you said, if Indiana wins, I feel like they match up well against Ohio State,
Mhm.
and they can stop the ball. If Iowa wins, I don't really know if the matchup matters as much as the environment because it's in Minneapolis. So I think that, not to steal an Iowa State term, but Carver North
Yeah.
would take over Minneapolis, especially with knowing that Clark's games are limited now
Mhm.
with how many games they're going to be able to watch her. And like you mentioned, it's sold out. So a lot of people, I think, are already going to be supporting Iowa. So if it's a championship game against Ohio State, ooh, it's hard to not take Iowa because, again, whether people realize it or not, especially in women's basketball, if you can get in an environment, it is tough to play because some teams are not used to playing against a loud, crazy
Mhm.
environment 24/7, like
Right.
Iowa is.
Right. Which is why I think those three teams are probably
Yep.
they won't get phased by it. And I think Iowa too, you have to remember, you have to factor in like how are they going to be without Molly, right? Without Molly Davis, how are they going to be? Now, Molly Davis is not Caitlin Clark, but Molly Davis
Yep.
is probably the second best, like
Yep.
second to fourth most important player on that team, right? So how will you play without her? You won't have any practice really. I mean, you have practice, but you won't have any warm-up games without her, really. Like you're just gonna get thrown into the Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament fire without really that's tough to find a replacement that late in the season. So we'll have to see how that goes. But I don't think it'll affect them a whole bunch, but it'll definitely be a thing to watch for sure.
Completely agree. And so you're going Indiana. I'm going to go Iowa when it comes to the Big Ten women's tournament. And then we got the Big 12, which I think could be really interesting because I think the 1 and 2 seed are the two teams leaving the Big 12,
Yeah.
and then everybody else.
Mhm.
And Iowa State got the 4 seed, obviously, which we mentioned would be a huge. I would label this sixth season as a.
Huge.
I am combining my words. I label this season as a huge success for
Huge.
Iowa State, especially with everything that's happened, the transfers leading into the season, the Emily Ryan missing half the season, and
Mhm.
then having a brand new roster, basically.
Yeah.
Huge season for Iowa State. I They will get the winner of the Big 12 Freshman of the Year is just deciding who's probably going to get it. I'm pretty sure I have a good feeling on who's probably going to win it,
Yeah.
but we'll see who the official winner gets announced when it's announced. Um, but what do you like in this? What do you want to see in matchup wise? Obviously, for me, selfishly, I would love to see an Iowa State K State final, so we could see Audie versus um,
Aoka
Ayoka
Lee. Yeah.
3 because those two that matchup has been fun to watch,
Yeah. Really
and
fun.
Audie's had her number, which
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't expect heading into this season.
No,
So that's
I
what
didn't
I would
expect
love to
it.
see. But
Yeah.
what do you see? I think Oklahoma has been on a roll this year, so it's going to be hard to take against them.
Yeah. Um, I kind of like Texas to be honest. I think Texas OU like I don't know, like Texas and OU are going to be so hard to pick against because I wouldn't say they're so much better than everybody else, but it feels like they kind of have a leg up on everybody else a little bit. Not saying they can't be beat. Like they can obviously anybody can beat them. Like just like favorite wise or which team do you think could stumble less? Right? Like I think Iowa State I'm not going to say they're like they're not prone to stumbling, but like
They
you've
had an
never been.
embarrassing loss against UCF.
Well, and like a lot of them have never been there. Like
Yep.
obviously, it's just another game, whatever, right? But I mean, who's okay? Emily's been there. Nye's been there,
Mary Kate, don't forget about Mary Kate.
right? Like Bellinger's not been like. I don't know if that's going to be a.
And it's an
I have a
open
hard.
gym. It's not the small arena that they've been
Yeah,
playing at. They're playing at the T-Mobile Center this year.
right. So I don't know. I'm interested to see, right? Like how they fare. I'm like honestly, I think that might be obviously a little bit selfish for Iowa State, but that might be one of my more interesting storylines to watch is just how they fare, even if it's just one game. Because that if they get Baylor, that's a tough game for them. But
This is a tough game.
not they. I mean, they already beat them this year, but that'd be a good game, right? That's the reason why it's 4-5 seed wise.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll have to see. I think I'd probably go Texas just because of how they lost to OU that last game is probably not feeling too hot. So, man, just could have easily won. Just didn't hustle after a loose ball in the corner, save it 3. Big OU wins Big 12 title. Like, I don't know. We'll have to see. I would probably lean Texas here if I had to pick.
Who do you got them playing in the Big 12 championship game? You got OU?
I think probably OU. I could like I could see Baylor making a sneaky run.
Yeah, I could see Baylor, and that's just what Baylor does, though. They always make those sneaky runs, which is why if I'm an Iowa State fan, I am terrified that we matched up against them, and that if Baylor wins the
it was
second round.
Interesting because I was wondering this yesterday or Sunday, like Baylor and Oklahoma State were playing. I think if Baylor lost to Oklahoma State, Iowa State would have been the 5, maybe. There was a scenario in which I can't remember it exactly, but if X thing happened, Iowa State would have been the 5, and Baylor wouldn't have been the 4. It would have been like West Virginia or somebody. Like all these teams right here are pretty close to each other.
Yep.
So I was wondering, would you rather be the 5 and play like a team not Baylor? But then I'm thinking you want the double bye. Like,
yeah.
Also, you want to be the
time,
higher
getting almost not a guaranteed win, but getting a win in the tournament with a young core is a good thing as well.
So I was wondering that yesterday.
It's a double-edged sword, really, because you want the double bye. Because at the end of the day, you want to win the championship.
Right.
Bill's not going into this being like, if we can just win one round, I'll take that.
And nobody should, right? Like, even if you're exactly Houston or Texas Tech, you're like, all right, we're winning this thing.
Yep. And I mean, the thing that just kills me though is that if Iowa State would have beaten UCF, they would be that 3 seed right now.
Yep.
Because they beat K-State twice and they would have been tied record wise. But again, just shows you that there is some growing pains with the young core. Hopefully they can get a win in this tournament. I'd love to see them match up against Oklahoma again. Maybe they can pull out a win.
I mean, they can beat any of those teams.
Yes. And I don't know. And the more and more, because like I said, Oklahoma is tough to beat right now. But at the same time, you mentioned Texas. I think that would be my Big 12 pick.
Yeah,
because I think Texas is probably going to win this one
solely for like complete revenge factor. Like they lost last year in the title game. OU got them a couple. Like there's a lot of revenge factors in the Texas pick for me.
And like the worst thing about it is that Iowa State, only 2 of those players on the roster really played heavy minutes in that championship run last year. And if they matched up with Texas, some of these players want to understand the revenge factor that's coming into play, but like Texas would come into that game looking to completely destroy Iowa State, which again, completely fair.
Right.
That's what's great about sports is that revenge games are a thing. And whether people like it or not, sometimes your team falls on the end of getting killed because of that.
And it also might help you a little bit. Let's say that was the final, right? Not saying it will be, but let's say it was. I don't think any of the Iowa State people would really care. Be like, okay, we're playing Texas. Well, meanwhile, I think a lot of Texas would be like, revenge game. I think a lot of I'd be like, okay, whatever. Like, here we go. Which might help you out.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be. You know what? I don't know. I think we could see. I'm gonna go. Texas is gonna win,
Mhm.
but I'll go with the sleeper of Baylor making the championship game.
I was gonna say something similar to that. I don't know if they will, and they could easily lose, but I like Texas, and then that top side, man. I honestly think that top side, OU, Iowa State, Baylor.
The thing that keeps me
Never
going
know.
with Baylor is that they're on the longest win streak currently,
Yep.
in the Big 12, and they have the most wins versus AP top 25 teams,
They've played
and
a hard schedule.
they would have to go through two of them
Mhm.
to make it to win the championship at
Mhm.
least.
Yep.
And if I think they could be a sneaky team in March, and if they have a good run, win the Big 12 potentially,
Yep.
they could have a really good seeding in the actual field of 64. But yeah, I'm going to go Texas Baylor, but Texas wins it, and we'll leave the Big 12 as Big 12 champs in the women's
Mhm.
side of things.
I think I'm with you.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about men's basketball because this is my opinion, the greatest conference tournament of all time. It's Arch
It's
Madness
really
season,
good.
baby. It is
It's
so
really
fun.
good.
I
It's really
love
good.
and it's great because we get two teams from the state of Iowa that represent Arch Madness for us. And I'm telling you, I I don't know why. I really do not know why. But I have a sneaky suspicion that Ben Jacobson might have a miracle run in him with this Northern
Yeah.
Iowa team.
Before we get into this, I want to ask you a question. We talk about small teams, small conferences, tournaments. Do you know how the WAC or the West Coast is set up?
Yep.
Do you prefer, for the people that don't know, the West Coast is set up like basically if you're a 1 or 2 seed, you have like 4 buys, you have to win like 2 games and you make the tournament. Uh whereas this one, like the Missouri Valley, if you look, obviously you have to like Drake has to win what would have to win what 1, 2, 3 games
Yep.
to make the NCAA tournament. What is your opinion? Do you like how the WAC or not the WAC, the West Coast Conference has set their tournament up where the really good teams are benefited because they have to win like 2 games, and if you're the bottom team, you have to win like 6? Or do you like it more how this is set up?
I'm a Missouri Valley guy through and through, so I'm gonna go with the Valley. I don't like the fact that the two best teams get 10 buys. Like I get the point because they want the best team to
Right.
make the tournament with their league being a one bid league. I will say that the Valley, in my opinion, is a little stronger in terms of maybe being able to compete in the
Yeah.
big dance.
Yeah.
So I can see why the Valley did this over what the West Coast Conference is doing. But even then, like, let's be honest, it's the same team, same 1 or 2 teams from the, West Coast Conference that's always competing for that
Mhm.
championship game, and that's why I think they do it a little more, as well as making sure that their
Mhm.
best teams make the tournament.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know, I hate it just because it's not fair to the lower teams. I get that they had a worse season, so they should probably have to fight more to get to the tournament. At the same time, it's rare that that conference tournament goes crazy because
Mhm.
of that 6 buys or whatever you said it was,
Yeah.
versus the Missouri Valley, where all you have to do is win 4 games in 4 days, and
Yeah.
you're going to the dance, which has never happened in the Missouri Valley Conference tournament.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're
um,
picking, right, you're not looking at that first round games
nope,
of anybody.
you're looking at the 4 teams that got the bye in Indiana State, Drake, Bradley, and Northern Iowa. And right now, I personally think that Northern Iowa is playing some of the best basketball in the conference. Absolutely destroyed Drake. Then Drake struggled against UIC. What did it go to 3
4
overtimes?
3 or 4 overtimes, yeah.
And they beat Bradley on Sunday, but even then, Bradley kept it close at the Knapp
Mhm.
Center,
Yeah.
and playing close to the Knapp Center is really difficult, whether people realize it or not. That's one thing
Yeah.
that not a lot of people realize is that Drake finished the season undefeated at home,
Right.
and I think they're on like a 20-plus game home win streak. So keeping it close against Drake at home is impressive. But the weird thing about this conference is that it seemed like it was Indiana State and Drake all year. Well, honestly, it was Drake 75% of the year, and then Indiana State started making noise. And what was potentially a too big bid league, depending on if Drake would have just kept rolling and finished as that 1 seed. If they would have lost in, let's say, the championship game or the semifinals, I think that they could have made it with whoever wins the conference tournament. However, Drake dropped the ball in the last couple weeks of the season, and now they're a 2 seed, and now they're a 1 bid league, unfortunately, for the Valley.
Right. I mean, man, this is a tough one. This is honestly a tough one when you look at it to see who's going to win.
It's going to be fun to watch.
So fun. Like, just so fun. There's so many good stories, right? Like, I do think Drake's the best team. So
if I was a investing person, I think Drake is I would put a heavy amount on Drake.
Yeah.
But Northern Iowa would be someone I might sprinkle in something just because their odds, I think, are so high or so low that the payback value would be great if they did end up winning it.
And so Drake is, like you said, clearly the best team in my opinion. So if you're the Missouri Valley and you want your best team to represent and maybe try to win a game, you probably want Drake. Indiana State, you got a legend that people are starting to learn about, right? Like Robbie Avila is an absolute meme-looking guy. Like, just, he's awesome. I don't know any other to say than he's awesome. And he gets buckets. And he has a potential to, if he makes the dance, have one of those legendary runs where they just win one game. Mm-hmm. But everybody now knows who he is and is like, oh, I like this guy, right? You have, like you said, Ben Jacobson, who's been in a tournament before. Keep in mind, UNI hung with UNC for a half into Battle for Atlantis. So they're a good team, right? So, like, they could maybe beat some teams. And then Bradley, you have the ultimate revenge factor of last year. So those are your 4 teams where it's like anything is a good story there. And that's always what those small conference tournaments lead to, is a pretty good story, right? Of, oh, this team could do this team to do that. Like, any 4 of those teams could have one of those type of stories. And that's what, like you said, makes this tournament, specifically this year, so awesome.
All right. I need your opinion on this. I don't really see it. So we host a coach's show at Ballard once a month. That's how I get my money for working the Ballard Network, because
we get all the Flight.
Shout out Flight Bar and Grill, because
Flight Bar and Grill sponsor the pod.
Oh yeah, sponsor the pod. We need the sponsorship. All right. So I think last month's show we had Jamie Pollard on, and I don't know if he was just. It was, I think, after Indiana. It was the day after Indiana State beat Drake at Indiana State. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was just because recency bias or whatever, but he came up to me, saw my glasses and my look, and he said that I look exactly like Robbie. And I need to know if other people see this, because
I did not know that was going, but that's awesome.
I need to know, do I look like Robbie?
Chat. Just chat. I need chat to decide here. Chat, does Brock look like?
And I know we're recording this, and we'll post this on social media so we can get an actual poll going. But
we need a poll.
What do you think? I need to know, and you won't hurt my feelings. It just caught me off guard when I was talking to him.
I did not I knew you were gonna say that he compared someone to Robbie. I did not think it was gonna be you. I did not think it was gonna be you. Although I will say, I low-key can see it a little bit. I wish you would have wore specs when you played, dude. That would have been so awesome.
You need some rec specs. I needed rec specs.
Oh man, so you don't have the sweet sleeve, like the half, like the quarter sleeve tattoos he's got going, but maybe you should consider investing.
Work on that.
Maybe you should consider investing in some sweet tattoos. You get a tattoo of him.
No. Be like, oh, is that self-portrait? So you're on the boat that I look like him.
I could see, like, I wouldn't be like, oh, you look
It's the
exactly like
glasses,
him.
right? It's the glasses.
Yeah.
It's the glasses. Good Lord, my forehead looks way bigger without my glasses on. We're going to put those things
I
back
don't
on.
know. I can see where he's coming from. I'll say that. I can see where he's coming from.
I just need to grow the hair that I don't have out, and then I'll be able to look exactly like him. But
man.
no, he came up to me and said that, and I was like, I don't know whether or not to be offended or.
Well, even then, right? Like, that's what we were saying
I was
about
dying.
the Valley. That guy is an absolute hooper. Like, that dude is so good. And no, like, people know obviously, but that if he makes it to March, he makes it into the tournament, imagine that guy going up and dropping 30, 10, and 5 on your team. It'd be
We
awesome.
might have to bring this video back multiple times if they make a deep run, because
Is this
good
Brock
Lord,
or Robbie?
we're gonna definitely have to do a poll about that, and I'm worried about what people are gonna say. I don't know if I'm gonna get my feelings hurt or not. No, I'm gonna make my pick, and I think it's gonna be Drake. I do think it's gonna be Drake in Indiana State and Drake winning. However, if there would be one team to make a little bit of a surprise run, because everybody's on Drake in Indiana State, it'd be Northern Iowa.
Yeah, I'll go Drake, Indiana State, but I'll go Indiana State winning.
So you're just hoping that we can keep bringing up this guy.
Yeah. Now I have to I have to fully commit to the bit now.
Oh, that's great. But I will say one of the things that I will never forget. It was the year after we graduated from high school, when Ballard made the state tournament, and we had to win the first round to play Norwalk. And the announcer said that Bowen Bourne is the type of guy that wouldn't play for a Power 5 school, but he'd be the type of guy that would make a Power 5 school absolutely miserable in March. So if Northern Iowa would to make a tournament and make the Cinderella run to the NCAA tournament by winning the Valley, watch out, ladies and gentlemen. Bowen Bourne, we know he can turn up.
Yeah, and he's got a good squad too. Bowen, Titan, Cole Henry, like they got a pretty good squad out there. Heisey, so
it's been so long. Come on, Ben, let's get back there.
Yeah,
and get revenge. Last time you were there, everybody made fun of you for how you got eliminated. Literally 2 days after you made one of the best half-court shots of all time. But that's all I got for today.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of good stuff happening, right? We got March Madness coming around the corner. We got all these conference tournaments coming around the corner.
We'll do a big conference tournament, like pick 'em kind of thing. Yeah. We won't do every conference next week, but we'll feature some of the bigger ones with the bigger storylines.
And then what else? I mean, we got Iowa's high school state basketball this week.
I'll be down there tomorrow for sure.
Shout out
versus Assumption.
Shout out everybody that made it this year. Big accomplishment. It's always fun playing there. So I would just enjoy it and see what happens, man. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good basketball. Obviously, Clark, new all-time scoring record, men's or women's in the NCAA. Big time accomplishment. Like we said, conference tournaments everywhere. And man, just some great basketball coming up. Obviously, there's always things to talk about in other realms of sports too. But man, we're excited for basketball to get to the pinnacle of what college basketball aims for every year, and just see what happens. So we'll, like Brock said, we'll have some more in-depth coverage of some of those tournaments next week, probably. And we'll be able to recap some of the tournaments we talked about this week, right? So we'll see who wins the Big 12. We'll see who wins the Big 10. Like, we'll be able to hit on some of those. So, yeah, that's all we got for this week on the 5-on-5 Sports Podcast. Myself and Brock Beirman. Peace.